Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is a little bit different. The model aircraft building and flying needs to go on hold for a few days because I've received an invite to a local model railway show. I've tried most types of modelling at one stage or another. Everything from model engineering to free flight, Warhammer, gaming. I've done everything apart from radio control cars, I would say. And this was a little adventure I had into model railway building. And it sat in storage for some time. And I was asked if I could bring it out of storage and take it to the show. So what I'm going to do is show you the layout being assembled and what it actually looks like and the sort of philosophy behind it. It may be of interest to some of you. If you're like me, I'm sure you like all aspects of model making. So here we go. So there we have it. Doesn't take long to put up. It's simply put together. I haven't connected any of the electronics yet. And as you can see, it's very much a stage layout. I've framed it and lit the thing up. It's a little cameo of an imaginary scene in North Yorkshire with an imaginary railway line. In this case, it's narrow gauge. Simply because I had the locos and I wanted to build a tabletop layout. And I got this out, I started it years and years ago and made it out of foam board to keep the weight right down. It got put up into the loft, ignored for a long time, and then I was driving my wife crazy, criticising the TV programme she was watching. And she told me to go away and do some model making, and why didn't I start doing that railway layout I began years ago. And this is it. So what I'll do is I'll take you and give you a closer look of the layout. The trains as such aren't my big thing. What I like doing is modelling, and I particularly like scenic modelling when it comes to model railways. So I'll show you a little bit closer look at what I've done and a little few words about how I've done it. Hope it's interesting to you. If we start at the left hand side of the layout, what I've tried to achieve are a series of little cameo scenes. And here you can see, I hope, the cattle pen with some cattle awaiting delivery. There's a chap there sitting in the loo and the door is broken, so he's using a newspaper to make sure that nobody can see his bits. Here we have the little goods shed, and you can notice that it's a well-worn yard with little mud puddles. The mud puddle here is made with a microscope lens to create the reflection. Little buildings in the background. All the buildings are scratch made, and they're made out of cardboard, and then the tiles, if I zoom in on them, on the roofing, have been individually glued on and painted and highlighted to get an overall effective wear. This bridge, the road that goes over the top of the line, hides a kickback siding which is at the back of the layout, which I'll show you in a moment. If we move along, a feature of the layout is that I've tried to create scenic breaks, and by that what I mean, I don't want the trains and the locomotives to be visible at all times. I want them to be appearing from behind a wall, appearing from underneath a bridge, appearing from behind some trees. So I made these trees. They're made out of wire and plaster of Paris mixed with some glue and they've been painted up. And these are the second go at making the trees, because my wife, rarely a critic of the model making that I do, said that they looked a bit too clumpy, so I did them again. And I'm rather pleased with the end result. I've used a plant called Seafoam, which is then being glued to the wire branches, and then it's been sprayed with cheap hair lacquer. If anybody's seen me, you'll know it's not my hair lacquer. Sprinkled with 2 different shades of flock, and I think it gives a very realistic impression of foliage. Take a little closer look at the dry stone walling. This is modelling clay into which over a foam core, and then I've scraped on the stonework onto some modelling clay. The grass is a mixture of static grass and surgical lint, which has been dyed, and then the static grass has been applied. The flowers, I took a while thinking about how to do them, because in this sort of rural idyll scene, I wanted some flowers to be shown, and I tried a number of ways to produce them. In the end, that's actually painted sand. I paint the sand with acrylic paint, which dries very quickly, then grind it in a pestle and mortar to get back to the individual grains, because it obviously clumps together with the paint. And then I produce little clumps of static grass, which I dip into glue and then dip into the coloured sand, and then sherbet type approach, and then you get these little clumps of flowers. And these were taller flowers that are produced in the same way. If you look very, very closely, you can see that there are rabbits on the layout. Added them for a little bit of interest for the children who were trying to see what they can spot. I always tell them it started with 2, but I don't know how many there are now, and they have great fun trying to find them. So let's move on and see a little bit more of the layout. The overbridge in the background hides the working fiddle yard, and the locomotives come out from there and perform their duties at this sleepy little station. All of the buildings are fictitious apart from this one. And I found this, it's a carriage shed, and I found a couple of photographs of a carriage shed on a light railway that was run by a gentleman called Colonel Stevens. And he was an extremely mean man. He would spend very little on the stations that he took charge of to make them run economically. And this was as good as this carriage shed ever got. It only deteriorated from here on in. And that's just made from scraps of wood and some bits of plastic card. You can see the children forever waiting for the train to pick them up and take them to school. It never arrives, so they always have a day off. The station, likewise, if we get a little bit closer, the station, characteristically with all the buildings on here, is clapperboard. It's all made from plastic card. The roofing is all hand-cut paper which has been painted. And here we have an engine shed and a cooling station and a signal box here. And if I just change the lighting round, you can see the layout literally in a different light. So I'll just pause it here and show you, or try to show you, the other effect that you can get. This then is the rear of the layout. As you can see, it's been to a few exhibitions, and I've put the plaques on the back of where I've been, where I've showed the layout. Unfortunately, COVID sort of hit and interfered with a lot of the shows that it had invites to, but that's by the by, it's all past us now, I hope. I have here my imaginary line and where it works, a sort of rough sequence of what I can run. And the way the layout operates is I have a cassette system, and the locomotive and the carriages and wagons go onto this cassette. It runs along this concealed line. It comes to a sector plate, which when the bolt's in, connects up electronically this line, and I can then move it to whichever line I want to. There are two lines that go onto the layout. The first one goes to the station, and the second, this nearer one here, runs on to the carriage shed. You'll notice you can see some of the writing on the boarding. This was all free. It came from a supermarket, and it was the signage that went above the aisles. I have some built-in lighting to help at the shows, because sometimes you're at a show and they can be very dark and dingy. Other times they're very bright, but I've got some concealed lighting under here. I've got a dimmer switch which operates the lighting for the street lamps, etc. Photographically, they're very bright. To the naked eye, they look right. So if anybody wants to take a photo, I can dim them down and get a much more realistic effect. This sort of cassette system means that it's very labour intensive at a show. And as I run this layout by myself, it means I have to spend a lot of time fiddling about. If you want to run a layout at a show, I would recommend you have something that just goes round and round. It's a lot easier. But I do spend a lot of time chatting to the public. I like talking to them and talking about the modelling that I do. And if they ask questions, I'm quite happy to stop what I'm doing and chat to them. It's much more labour intensive. This is more of a layout that you would run at home for your own enjoyment, I would suggest. But never mind, it is what it is, and it's about the journey for me in model making as well as the destination. So that's the rear end. It's all the gubbins and junk that accumulates over a weekend show sits behind this cloth surround, and there are units that latch onto the back, piggyback style, for the controller, and I'll show you that now. I've now added on the cassette holder, and there's room for another here. I can actually load up the trains and have an empty one, and I basically rotate them around. So that one will go there, then the next one will go on, run, and so on. And that's how I actually operate the layout. It's a simple DC control. It's not that the logo's on chip to the analog, and because it's an analog layout, I have a copy of the plan, the track plan here, and all the switches are isolation switches, so I can feed power to the line. So if I was running into the engine shed, I can run in, flick the switch, and hold the loco there. Likewise, I can do all of the other lines, and there are various various positions. I can hold locos, and I'll have maybe 2 or 3 locos on the line at any one time. The little red switches are momentary switches, and they operate the point servos, or point motors rather. So through a solenoid, it'll throw the switch and change the polarity, so I can route them through. It's quite logical, you get used to doing it. Let's have a look at the front one last time. As you can see, I've tried to add another dimension to the layout, and that is I've lit up the buildings and the street lamps and the yard lamps to try and give a little bit more interest to the layout. And when I do exhibit it, I'll run it in daylight hours, and then occasionally I'll turn these lights on, and you can see the layout in its nighttime glory. It often depends on the lighting conditions in the modelling hall. It isn't always work very well, but it's there as an added feature. And a lot of people have commented they enjoy seeing it, particularly the children. So it's something that I leave on the layout. Now the name, Holligan Bridge, I've been asked lots of questions about it, In fact, one person even said that they knew it and they knew where it was, which was a shock to me because it's totally made up. Now, it took me about 8 months to finish the layout from building the bare baseboards, which had been stored for a long time, years in fact, and I finished it at Christmas. Well, the bridge part's easy because there's a bridge on the layout, and the holigan is an old English word for holly, and because I finished it at Christmas, I thought it would be a nice little twerky in-joke, Holigan Bridge. I hope you've enjoyed that little tour. My next task is to check out all the wiring, check the point motors, always a pain, clean the track and give it an hour or so running time just to make sure everything's working correctly, and then it'll be ready to pack away, ready to go to the local exhibition. I hope you enjoyed that. It's very different to what I normally post because I just like all kinds of modelling. Oh, one other thing. You may have noticed that I've cut out the ends of the boards, and that's because it struck me that if you're looking at a railway line, you tend to look down the lines. So what I did is I cut it out so you could look down the railway line. And many visitors like taking photographs down the track as the locos come out of the tunnel. I hope that little video was of interest. Just something a little bit different. I've had to put the model aircraft on hold for a day or so. So all the best, everybody. I hope you have a good weekend and you can get flying. Flying's not going to be an option for me. It's a 2-day event, but I'll make up for it next week. Bye for now.